Hello, everybody, and we are together in this strange and unusual way, by just for a couple of days. This is a PowerPoint about romantic poetry. We have already discussed a bit about this movement, and if you remember, I told you it was a real revolution because of the way in which it started. Quite immediate, something unexpected. And you have only 6 slides that you can use to revise or to learn something about romantic experience in UK. My recommendation, of course, is read the 2 poems first, the 2 poems by William Wordsworth in particular, because those poems are a good example to model poems, apart from being the very the very start of the movement, romantic movement. We have had a taste of it with William Blake, the visionary poet. Romantic movement was an artistic movement, and it was all about a new sensibility. In particular, it stated the difference and the rejection of the previous age, Enlightenment. I also told you something that it's in the slide, imagination against reason. This is the icon of British Romanticism. Okay. About the origin and the basic principle, we can say that there is some politics, at the back of it. It was the politics is what the Europe was producing at that time, and not only Europe. In fact, I mentioned here American Revolution, the American Revolution of colonies, and French Revolution, for instance, because of the French Revolution, which lasted a while, and it was the base of for freedom, for the request of freedom, and we have a great request of freedom in the way poets should write their poems. And then independence wars in Poland, Spain, Greece, and other small and experience all over Europe. It also has a emotional basis. The new movement express an extreme assertion of the self. So a great attention is paid to the individual experience, together with the same sense of infinite and transcendental. The Romantic Age became in 1798, which is the date when William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge published the Lyrical Ballads, that can be considered the manifesto of British Romanticism. In particular, the preface to the second edition of the Lyrical Ballads. The Lyrical Ballads is a collection of poems written by Wordsworth and Coleridge, and most of these poems were written in the Lake District, where Wordsworth used to live together with his sister, and that was a very natural spot, the Lake District, at the border, in the border country in Scotland, and they needed to be in close contact with nature. They believed that poetry arises from nature, from the contact with nature. In this slide, we have the main features listed one after the other. Literature expressing emotional matters in an imaginative form, like in I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high or veils and hills. liberalism in literature, imagination, emotions and freedom are the focal points of romanticism. And again, a great attention to the individual, the way they are and feel. They are and feel. The previous classical age and the romantic age. The classical age, which is the previous age, the previous intellectual age, cultural age, artistic age, has some typical feature. There is a great faith in reason. There is a great interest in urban society. It was the time where cities were growing up in near industrial sites. Public impersonal poetry, una poesia che non era per gli individui o degli individui. A great interest in scientific matters because science was a good companion for the progress and the industrialization. This is the age of industrial revolution. Romantic age instead has a great faith in the senses, in feelings, in imagination. For a romantic artist, feelings, imaginations are tools to understand the reality. A great interest in rural and natural world, as opposed to industrial sites and towns. Subjective poetry, poetry that tells a lot about the inner side of people, so feelings and emotion. Interest in the mysterious and infinite. There is a great attention to faraway cultures, Oriental civilizations. Everything which is new and far away is interested for the romantic. Spontaneity, freedom from rules, no rules in poetry, love of and worship of nature. Quindi un grande amore per la natura. Nature is considered God in itself. Fascination with the past, especially the myth and mysticism and the legend of the Middle Ages. Middle Ages is the time where attention to science didn't exist. Science didn't exist. The use of reason didn't exist. Everything was natural. And more common man and childhood over urban sophistication. Che significa? The people, the simple people who have no learning, they are closer to the moment of creation. They are closer to the moment where they came into existence. They haven't learned anything, but they have a lot of the natural moment they were created. A child, for this same reason, is more interesting compared to an adult because a child is still close to the natural moment of creation. So nature over artificial. Everything that we acquire with the experience is also everything which corrupt our natural being. And in poetry, in particular, in writing poems, there is they use a variety of poetic form, ballads, lyrics. They tended to express the feeling of men in solitude as opposed to those of men in society. What does it mean? There is the will to be on their own. If you are alone, you can look inside yourself. If you are together with people, in a group of people, you cannot describe the way you feel inside properly. All poets except Blake described the natural environment because in nature they considered there was the presence of God. There is a pantheistic vision of nature, of course. Language more free and informal. The language was free. It was a language that was used as it came, with no readjustment, just the way it came up to your mouth. And informal because they didn't believe that poems had to be written in a special way, but right the opposite. The poems had to use a language which was the language used by common people in everyday situation, unlike the poems written in the 18th century in the classical age. So read all these, focus your attention on these ideas, but I recommend to read a couple of times those two poems because they will tell you a lot. They will tell you more than this PowerPoint and more than any other possible explanation. Okay, and I hope we can meet soon anyway. But I will send you something else. Thanks for your attention, of course.